Hello, everybody. I am Mrs. Poppet, and this is my place. Welcome, welcome, welcome back. It's time for another story time, and I'm so glad you decided to come and share it with me. Today's story is called Kit the Enchanted Cat. Do you like cats? Well, this one is very special because it's enchanted. So, how about if we get started and find out why? Kit the Enchanted Cat. There once was a queen who had a cat. She had a husband, too, and a palace, and a jewel box, and servants. All were of the best quality. But the queen treasured the cat above all. The cat was pretty, with smoky gray fur and sky blue eyes. She liked to amuse the queen. She danced and chased butterflies, leapt after her tail, and was as entertaining as any cat could be. The cat led an easy life. She went everywhere with the queen and ate royally in a cat way. One day, she had a kitten. She named it Kip. "You're luckier than I," said the queen. "I may be queen, but I have no babies, and now you'll leave me to take care of your kitten." "Don't cry, Majesty," said the cat, who was sensible as well as very affectionate. "Crying never helps. Besides, I promise you that, as far as babies are concerned, you shall soon be as well off as I." That night, the cat ran off to the forest to find a fairy friend of hers. No one knows exactly what they talked about, but some little time later, the queen had a baby. It was a girl. Gay, sweet, and pretty. The queen was delighted. She called her baby Ingrid. One day the baby caught sight of a little cat, Kip. The baby and the cat became playmates. They slept in the same crib. The princess loved Kip dearly. But, you know, a 4-month-old baby is still a baby, while a little cat is quite grown up. And one evening, Kip went off on some cat-like errand, and she did not come back for a long time. Years later, Princess Ingrid was playing in the garden. She threw her ball high into the air, high, to see how it would come down. The ball came down and rolled under a thicket of rose bushes. Ingrid braved the thorns to reach for it. She heard a voice say, "Hello, Ingrid." She looked and saw a pretty tiger-striped cat. "How do you know my name?" asked the princess. "Don't you remember Kip?" asked the cat. "No one I know is named Kip," said Ingrid. I'm Kip," purred the cat. "I used to sleep in your arms, but children have short memories, not like cats. I could go right to the room where your crib stood. Our crib it was then." Just then Ingrid's governess called her and came up. When she saw the cat, she cried, "Shoo, you dirty thing! Go away!" The cat didn't wait a moment longer. She fled into the forest before Ingrid could stop her. When her mother came to tuck her into bed that night, Ingrid asked her about the cat. "Yes, it is quite true," said her mother. "I wish I'd seen Kip again." The next day the sun rose early and it was very hot. Too hot to play, except in the shade. Ingrid led her governess towards the forest and they sat down under a big tree. Ingrid sang so softly that her governess fell asleep, as Ingrid had hoped she would. She slipped into the woods calling, "Kip, Kip." At last she came to a brook, took off her shoes and socks, and went wading in the cool water. Suddenly there was a loud crashing noise. She looked around, and there behind her was a monster of a giant, black-bearded giant. He grabbed Ingrid's arm and said roughly, "Come with me." He walked so fast that Ingrid had to run to keep up. Her bare feet hurt, but she did not dare ask if she could go back to put her shoes on. Her tears made the giant furious. "I hate cry-babies," he shouted. "I'll give you something to cry for." Thereupon he pulled out a knife and cut off her feet and put them in his pocket. Then he strode off alone in the woods. Ingrid fainted. When she came to, she saw she wouldn't be able to walk without her feet. The woods were silent. After a long time, Ingrid heard the sound of wheels. "Help!" she shouted. "Coming!" cried someone. It was Kip. She was driving her own horse and carriage. Gently she picked up poor Ingrid and put her in the carriage. When Ingrid next opened her eyes, she was on a soft bed. Kip fed her warm milk. Her ankles didn't hurt any more, for Kip had bandaged them with some ointment made of magic healing herbs. "You mustn't move," said Kip. "Go back to sleep while I go find the giant and get your feet. I'll lock the door from the outside so no one will bother you." Kip set out in her carriage. She left it a little ways away from the giant's cave and went quietly to the entrance. She hid behind a rock and listened. The giant was talking to his wife. "Ah, disgusting crybaby," he stormed. "I should have killed her." "Go and get her tomorrow," said his wife. "She'll make us a tasty supper." "She's too young. They don't taste good at that age," grumbled the giant. Kip slipped into the cave as they talked. She dumped a whole box of salt into the pot of soup that was cooking on the fire. Then Kip stole out again. Presently the giant's wife served the soup. She and her husband drank 2 big bowlfuls in greedy gulps. The salt made them very thirsty. "I must go to the brook for a drink," said the giant. "I must too," said his wife. Kip ran into the cave while they were gone. In the giant's overcoat pocket she found Ingrid's feet. She took them and drove back home as fast as she could. Ingrid was waiting for her. "Here they are," Kip said. "Don't worry, I'll have them attached to your ankles again in no time." She bound the feet to Ingrid's ankles with a bandage of healing herbs. "You mustn't walk for a few days," Kip said. "Tomorrow I'll drive you home. The Queen will be glad to find you safe." The Queen was indeed very happy to find her daughter again. As she took Ingrid from Kip's arms, she said, "How can I repay your wonderful kindness? You saved Ingrid's life. Her life is dearer to me than my own." "Forget me for now," said Kip. "Think only of Ingrid. One day I may have a favor to ask of your majesties." Then Kip returned to her forest home. When Ingrid heard that Kip had left, she grew very sad. She would not talk of anything, or eat, or sleep. The only thing she talked of was Kip. Her mother bought her new party dresses, baskets of fruit, exciting new books, but nothing would interest her. "I don't know what to do," said the Queen to the King. "I've tried everything." "Not everything," said the King thoughtfully. "What then?" asked the Queen. "Suppose we find her a husband," said the King. "Perhaps that would interest her." The Queen agreed, and all the gayest, handsomest, best princes were brought to court. Fortunately, Ingrid smiled at the nicest of them. That smile was the first sign of many happy hours. Ingrid and the young prince were betrothed. The next day of the day of the feast came. The bells rang out, the court rejoiced, banners flew, and the young couple were married. After the ceremony there was a ball. Late in the evening Kip appeared. Ingrid hugged and kissed her, delighted to see her dear cat again. "I have a favor to ask you now," said Kip. Yes, of course, dear Kip, said Ingrid. May I sleep tonight at the foot of your bed? Said Kip. Is that all? Of course you may, said Ingrid. That's all, said Kip. That night, Kip slept at the foot of Ingrid's bed, and the next morning, on the cushions where Kip had slept, lay a beautiful young princess. She quickly told her strange story. She and her mother had been enchanted by a cruel fairy. They were condemned to be cats until they had accomplished some truly amazing thing. Her mother had died without succeeding, but Kip had profited from the cruelty of the giant. She'd done something very special indeed. Now she was free and a princess again. Ingrid was overjoyed to have found so true a friend, and she asked Kip to come and live at the court. Soon an excellent young prince was found for Kip, and there was a splendid marriage feast. Long after, when Ingrid and Kip would sit under the trees at the edge of the forest, their grandchildren would come and ask for a story. What story do you suppose they liked to hear best? Wasn't that a wonderful story? They start out as young kitten and child together, young friends together, and yet they keep helping each other out as life goes on, and they end up very happy together as friends even as they get older. That's what's important about being friends. You have to remember to always help your friends out, and they'll help you, and in the end, everybody turns out happy. Isn't that a great story? Well, I hope you liked it as much as I did. And we'll have another one next time. See you then.